Welcome to Wine for Normal People, the podcast for people who like wine, but not the snobbery that goes with it. I'm your host, Elizabeth Schneider, author of the Wine for Normal People book and certified wine dork.
And I'm MC Ice, just a wine-loving normal person.
Today's show is going to be a little bit heavier than usual. It is going to deal with stuff in the industry versus wine education, but in understanding what's going on in wine, I think it's important to understand what's going on in the industry.
When you say heavier, is this somehow related to my pounds that I've put on here, or?
No.
Okay.
No, but I like where you're going with that. No.
Thank you.
It's a heavy topic of conversation. That being said,
it's just wine. How heavy can it be?
Because it's the world invading our little wine world. However, I feel that it is important for me as a woman in wine to make this statement and to explain to people what's going on.
Uh-oh.
I still think that we can handle it in a way that is not going to bore people. What do you think?
I think probably just the opposite.
This is what's going to happen. First, I'm going to read something that I will post on the blog. Yes, there is a blog, and occasionally I do write on it. That is how all this started, actually. winefornormalpeople.com/blog. This is more of a scripted first part of the podcast, and then we'll talk about what the content of this piece really means. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds pretty good.
I feel like I'm like the NPR scripted series.
No,
you know,
look, you did your own audiobook. You can do this.
All right, here goes. After mulling over the various scandals in wine lately and thinking about my position in the wine world, I have a perspective to add beyond just a social media post to call out the behavior of those in the wine business, those who have minimized the situation, and the hollow calls for change that likely won't happen. Part 1, what's in the news and what I have seen. If you missed it, in the past few months, a spate of scandals has broken out in the wine world regarding women in wine. First, it was the #WineBitch scandal in the United Kingdom. This occurred when a well-known TV wine personality from The Wine Show in the UK and his cronies passed around text messages debasing young female and softer male wine influencers. These would be people mainly on Instagram and things like that. I didn't see these messages before they were removed from the web, but I've heard from those who did that the threads were raunchy, rude rants. They were also far-reaching, covering everything from the lack of value of these people's contributions to the wine world. One could say that's at least okay to raise, although not in the manner raised, to criticizing their children and families, not at all okay. On the heels of this, an expose in the New York Times revealed that the highest-ranking men of the cult of master sommeliers, as I like to call it and have written about before, have been demanding sexual favors and even raping young women in exchange for guaranteed career advancement. I've made the argument for a long time that the court of master sommeliers is an exclusive in-crowd of people who know each other and who dictate membership based not only on skill but on favoritism. Apparently, that favoritism stretches far beyond the run-of-the-mill BS that I had speculated about. Is this surprising? No. When I worked at the big hulking winery in the mid-2000s, executive assistants who had been there for 35 years told me that senior executives and owners used to say wildly inappropriate things to them and kiss them and grope them while they were trying to work. Although these women tried literally to run away from these predators, this mistreatment was acceptable behavior, and the women's silence was the only way to maintain employment. I'm not excusing the behavior, but maybe this legacy means we need to take a historical view to understand the issues. Wine in the United States is an old school industry. Its very structure is based on something that was set up in 1933 after Congress's failed attempt to ban alcohol. They set up roadblocks and a 3-tier system that treats adults as children with choices made for them about what, when, and how they can buy wine, gives certain huge producers and distributors power over markets, and in certain states, despite Supreme Court rulings, deny citizens the ability to procure the wines they prefer to drink. Further, For those in the industry, if you don't drink copious amounts with your customers and coworkers, and if you're a woman not willing to be a good old boy and listen to piggish talk and smoke cigars, you're a pariah. It's an industry based on power in the hands of the few, like many industries. The deification of sommeliers who completely disconnect with the very people they're supposed to serve in pursuit of a title that will give them power is another outgrowth of this. The wine industry is based on other people who apparently know better than you, whomever you are, making decisions for you that you may or may not agree with. The recent scandals prove that little has changed since the incidents of the Mad Men era the women at the big hulking winery told me about. And as more women have entered the industry, the opportunities for this kind of behavior have just multiplied. Sexism in the wine industry is a subtle symphony of quiet misogyny. Let me give you some of the greatest hits that have been rattled off to me over the 15 years I've been in this industry by men and women who had more status than I. Here's a few quotes. You know, the thing about you, Elizabeth, is that you seem so demure and so pretty and sweet. Then you open your mouth and it's all ruined. That was a male educator my first week at the big hulking winery. Why do you want to transfer to Atlanta? If you think MC Ice has more earning potential and one of you has to make a choice, why don't you just quit your job and have babies? My boss, a director at the big hulking winery. And another quote, I try to be particularly supportive of all women doing the admirable job of spreading the word about wine in whatever form, but I suppose many would argue that yours is not an all-woman enterprise, of course referring to you, MC Ice, and that was the foremost female authority on wine saying that to me. I can't count the number of times I've been ignored when I'm in a group of industry men talking about wine. I'm usually invisible to them and generally have no value. When I'm with MC Ice in a setting that is not for podcast fans and listeners, men ask him the questions about wine even after he tells them what I do. And although I was too old and not cute enough to be a candidate for sexual harassment when I entered wine, the invisibility factor and belittlement factor was high with my male colleagues and bosses. Women in high positions in wine are also guilty of this type of behavior, ignoring those they feel are unimportant or who lack status. Men and women at conferences will ignore me until someone else tells them what I do, and then there's huge interest on their part, huge disgust on mine. Plenty of women in wine are just about self-preservation. In fact, an article by Jancis Robinson is nothing short of a "there's nothing to see here" rant about how the younger generation has social media to make a fuss, as she puts it. She argues that change should come for the economic viability of the wine industry, not for the absolute immorality of the acts of misogyny and inequality. I fear that her stance and those that support her show us that many women of the old guard are equally at fault for ignoring what goes on in the real world with normal wine people, aka the unwashed masses. The solution. No, it's not more women's only groups or women's scholarships. I don't really consider myself part of the wine industry. I chose to blaze my own path and work with what I consider to be the best sides of wine, producers and wine drinkers, and abandon the business for the very reasons I just described. Because of that, I often stay out of these debates. But this is one I need to discuss because, like everything else in wine, the issue has been framed in a way that just doesn't work and won't bring structural change. So now I'd like to talk about the fix, because the fix is not letting the men and women with stale ideas in the wine industry and financial interest steer the ship. And this is what is happening now. The wine industry loves to take the issue of the day, elevate it, and sweep it under the rug or marginalize it so it becomes a splinter group. That's what I see happening now. Women's initiatives! Let's create a group to forward the cause of women in wine. Let's make it so women get promoted and we have our own safe space. Let's give scholarships to women. This tack lacks imagination and accomplishes nothing. We've already done this. It doesn't work. The large corporations become sponsors of these women-first organizations, so the problems they themselves create in the industry can't be discussed in an open forum. Further, often the events are too costly and in places where the people who would benefit most can't afford to get to. Napa and New York ain't cheap. And frankly, once these organizations are off the ground, the women form their own in-crowd and never reach the people who may need the most help. Think of the young woman starting out in wine in Alabama who may be getting harassed but has nowhere to turn, or the sommelier in Omaha who's been told she can't advance because men won't take her seriously at a steakhouse. The elite women's groups and scholarships for the few lucky enough to get them do nothing to help the majority of women. And while I applaud the people who are trying to lift up other women, unlike many in the old guard who feel they need to keep rising stars down to maintain their own status, we do not and cannot operate in a bubble. These organizations that are supporting women need to take a hard look at how to make change. The only way to make this work is to enlist male allies, not to cloister off in a group of women who believe what you believe. Men and women must work together to create a productive solution that doesn't make this problem a women's issue, thus giving these predators and subtle sexists the power to make the situation an us versus them issue. The organizations for women are already funded and organized, but now it's time for them to move beyond talk and into action. They should take a page from the LGBTQ community. PFLAG could serve as a great model. Now, PFLAG is an organization that works to make sure that all people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer are not only valued by society, but take pride in and value themselves. And they do it by providing peer-to-peer support, educating people on the issues that are important to the community, and advocating for inclusive policies and laws. And they are a community that involves families and people in the workplace. And it is an excellent organization that has been around for over 100 years. The way that they operate is that chapters exist all over the U.S. to help people work together to understand the issues, foster acceptance, and create safer and more inclusive communities for people of the LGBTQ community. The volunteers' chapter structure allows dialogue, understanding, and true change, and is not dependent on how much money you have or whether or not you can pay $1,000 for a weekend in New York or Napa. With well-known, funded, publicized, and gender-inclusive chapters, change can happen in any community where women and decent, good men are willing to work to solve the problem in wine. Women are hurt and outraged, but they should heed the warning. It's never right to close ranks and push people to the margins who want to help and who are willing during our darkest times to stand up for us and with us to help fight the darker elements of sexism. This is not a woman's issue. This is a cultural change that must happen in the wine industry. It can't be done with scholarships and conferences of women alone. It must be a joint effort from everyone who is willing to be educated and to advocate for fairness. Unless we address the problem and come up with an innovative, inclusive solution, the engine of sexism and discrimination will continue in wine, stifling creativity, destroying the self-esteem of outstanding people, and holding the entire wine industry back from the progress it deserves. So that's my statement.
Oh,
MCI,
that's it?
yeah, that's it. Sorry so long.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, shall we?
I think I heard something about a subtle symphony of quiet misogyny. Is that?
Yeah, I
Did
just
I make
like
that up?
No, did you like that phrase?
What fortune cookie did you get that out of?
I actually got the child fortune cookie kit that we were going to buy for our kids,
right.
and I just decided that had enough alliteration to go. What do you think about that?
I think it's brilliant.
Well, let's first talk about the scandals. It's pretty bad. We're in like Harvey Weinstein
Yeah, I know.
territory.
Well, I'm still kind of mad at the comment that you received about your business is not a female-run company. That still irritates me.
Well, it's your fault.
I know.
'Cause you are the kingpin here. I mean, this is,
I don't do
it's,
squat.
What's really funny about this is that it speaks to exactly the same issue that when you and I are together,
I was going to say it's
that
same.
of course it
Hey,
defers
here's
to
my wife. She is a published wine author and 10-year veteran podcaster on wine. Oh, yet you still want to ask me about what we should. Well, okay, great.
It
yeah.
happens almost
It's
every time,
ridiculous.
unless we're with people that are fans, and we love you, fans and listeners. But there's a few things that are interesting. So first of all, the fact that these scandals are still going on, it really brought me back to when I was at the Big Hulking Winery. Now, here's the story for those of you who are wondering the chronology here. MC Ice and I met at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Go Heels.
Go
Love
Heels.
the school. We met there in our business graduate
We're getting
school.
our MBA.
We started dating
Like,
at sort of towards the end.
Right at the end.
And
I already
I
taken a job in Atlanta,
Atlanta,
and you
and I right.
had taken the one with the big hulking winery out in
In
California.
California. So I was very excited about this job. And then quickly things devolved, and he received daily, sometimes many times a day, phone calls with astounding things that eventually had me telling anybody that went to our business school that they should never work for this particular company because it literally had the opposite values of what Keenan Flagler stands for, our business school stood for.
I'm trying to think whether I've heard of anyone that has told stories that involved employees crying.
I
Not that you were
It
crying,
wasn't
but
me.
other employees were. But that just speaks to the culture
Yeah,
at
it
this
just made me
organization.
really angry. But a lot of the things that I saw at the winery, as I described in what I just read, were this complete inequity. Either you were in the club or you were outside the club. There were very few women that were in that club. And the general workhorse, everything was sort of foisted on the women, except the one woman who was at the top,
Right.
who really didn't advocate for women. It's so funny that that particular individual always goes out as being the strong woman who's
Right.
part of this family. But this culture,
When you said Mad Men, that struck a chord with me. I think that sums up the kind of experiences that you're talking about.
I think the Mad Men thing is one thing, but then there is this, and the reason that I called it the subtle symphony is that in the background of rah women, woman of the year, and women doing all of these things, that, oh, look how we have a woman winemaker. Still, we have in the UK this scandal where people are looking at these young women who are influencers. And let me be clear about this. I have a very, very clear stance on women wine influencers. Perhaps they don't do what I do. Maybe I am more academic than some. Maybe I'm less academic than others, right? But these people serve a very key role in the wine industry right now. And we owe them all a debt of gratitude. They have taken the medium of Instagram and social media, and they have managed to connect with people who maybe have a passing interest in wine. Occasionally, some of those people who have a passing interest become more deeply interested because of these women and some men.
But I got to give you credit. I was harping on some of them when you brought them up as part of this topic just to defend you. I didn't know anything about them, but I said anyone that wasn't you is terrible. And
Oh, you're so nice.
right, and you said don't you dare say that about these people. That they're doing a wonderful thing for the industry, and you know what? Some of their listeners or readers or followers may eventually become some of yours too.
Ours, thank you very much.
Yep.
Especially now that, I mean, if I'm going to be accused of being not an all-woman
I'm
enterprise, you
sorry.
better
I'm
really
sorry.
step up here.
Mine.
Yes,
And
yours.
if you're still employed, then
Okay, good,
you know,
good.
we'll see.
Yeah, so when I saw that wine bitch scandal, and again, I'm sorry for the profanity, but that's just what it's called, it really bothered me because there is enough room for everybody. And again, these women mostly, but some men, are doing a really great job of making the invitation to people who may not be able to get into wine any other way. And so what if they talk about it differently or they take a lot of pictures of themselves? That's a generational thing. In many ways, I've told some of these people before who I'm friends with, good for them. I mean, like, I don't even like to put one picture of myself up, you know? So I think it's pretty amazing that these people put themselves out there. And I find it disgusting that people, again, like I said in what I wrote, it's okay to raise that you question the contribution to wine. I understand that not everybody has my stance on this, and I can see the other side. I understand that some people feel that by making it about them and their personalities or about something besides wine, it takes away from the seriousness of wine. Okay, if that's how you feel, we can have that discussion. But to then do these disgusting rants about these people and talk about their looks and their families, I mean, that is just pure misogyny. It's just disgusting and it's inexcusable. And unfortunately, it's a guy that I met last year who I thought was a pretty cool guy. I was going to
Right.
have him on the show. It is offensive. It is not surprising. As I was saying before, it started in the big winery, but I will say that even though I wound up becoming friends with some of the people in the wine industry in Atlanta, they were terrible to me when I first started. They thought I was a joke. I'm sure they said a lot of the same things that this guy in the UK said about me. And I know that people, before everybody listening actually decided that they thought that I had some value, really devalued me. So until someone else validated my value in the wine industry, I was nothing.
You got to give yourself some credit. It's not just other people validating you. You have stuck with some of these people to earn the respect, but you had to earn every ounce of it.
Yes, way
You
more
had to
than
prove it. You weren't given any benefit of the doubt.
And this goes into that sommelier thing because most of those people, we'll talk about that expose, most of those people in Atlanta were trying to become master sommeliers. All right, I think we need a break from this heavy topic to talk about our sponsors this week. Patrons, you are helping us to make the podcast possible, produce great content week after week, and there's a growing, fantastic community. Patreon.com, patreon.com/wine for normal people. For as little as $22 a year, you can join and get great bonus content. In the month of December, I'll do a bunch more hangouts. Think about joining. We would love to have you part of the community. patreon.com/wine for normal people. Also want to remind you, there are some classes available. winefornormalpeople.com/classes. Also, gift certificates, if you would like to buy somebody a class or two, are available on the site. Buy it, you get a code, forward that on to your wine lover friend or family member, and they can take a class on you next year. That can go along with the Wine for Normal People book. If you send your receipt to hello@winefornormalpeople.com and let me know what your return address is, I will send you a customized book plate. So get the book, get a gift certificate from Wine for Normal People, or get a gift certificate from our sponsor, Wine Access, wineaccess.com/normal. Wine Access is awesome. It's a website. It has exclusive wines. They over deliver for the price. They have a range. Some stuff is $15, some stuff is $1,500. All of it is high quality, no matter what. Their online wine store has so much selection. There is something for everyone. This is a great way to shop the world. They stake their reputation on every bottle they pick. They have an amazing team of experts. They try 20,000 bottles a year among them. Only 1 out of 18 make the cut. And listen, we are all looking for good gifts. Give the gift of wine. Pick up a Wine for Normal People book, get a customized book plate, and then go to wineaccess.com/normal and get your loved one an e-gift certificate in any amount. You just enter their name, you enter your information, put the denomination, and then you are done. Whatever your recipient orders from Wine Access, it's guaranteed to be good quality. Where else can you really say that? wineaccess.com/normal. And now let's get back to this heavy, I know, but important show. The women that were trying to become master sommeliers, as we see, some of these people, it was at great personal cost to them. Sexual favors and dealing with harassment and rape in some cases, as this expose says. These master sommeliers are predators. And this, again, is not surprising. I remember, and you can go back and listen to it, I had to edit out a portion of it. They forced me to edit out a portion of this, but I did a podcast with a woman named Michelle DeFeo, who is the North American's head of Laurent Perrier Champagne. And she was telling horrible stories about people completely debasing her when she was in sales. And she was very open and honest. And the PR company at the time said, you've got to take that out. We don't want that in.
Wow.
And she was so sharp. I think a very good role model for women. But again, that was something even a few years ago that no one wanted to talk about. But this has been going on in the wine industry as it has been going on in entertainment. And maybe it happens in a lot of other industries, but I'll tell you, I worked in footwear,
You're right.
which is a really male-dominated industry. I worked in technology, which is male-dominated, but more fair. And I never saw anything like what I see in the wine industry, ever. yes, there were some problems. I could tell you some stories that were, and especially when I was an intern, it was way worse.
Mhm.
But when I worked at the sneaker company, there was none of that. No
I would have
innuendo.
expected there would be some.
No, there was one jerky guy who I didn't get along with who made an off-color comment one time that was very offensive at the time. It was something about Monica Lewinsky, and I was alone with him, and it made me uncomfortable.
Right.
But in the year and a half that I was there, it wasn't very long, really nothing ever made me uncomfortable. And in the technology company, it was never anyone that made me uncomfortable, never the kinds of blatant sexism, the kinds of ignoring you. I mean, in fact, I felt sometimes in technology almost the opposite. Like if you spoke and you were a woman, they really wanted to hear what you had to say. And sometimes that was uncomfortable because you weren't quite sure it was the right thing to say, but they were really respecting you. Now, again, I know that's not everybody's experience. And those Psalm movies have done nothing good for those poor women who were doing the Court of Master Sommeliers, because what wound up happening is they wound up wanting this so badly, just like all those people in those stupid movies, that they lost sight of what was important. I don't know that they would have done it if it wasn't such a power play.
How many women have made it to that master level?
There are, in the United States, 172 people who are master sommeliers,
Okay.
and 28 are women.
28. But women comprise about half the overall population.
And I'd
There
say
seems to
probably
be a slight
40%
disparity.
of, at least 40% of the wine industry.
Really?
Yeah,
So
probably.
could you see them hitting the ceiling? And do you? I mean, can you say, all right, I can tell you right now, you're going to go this far, and
I
here's
mean, I
where
could
you're
see
going to
men doing that too. The men who didn't fit in
the nice
with them.
guys.
Yeah, then honestly,
Yeah,
it was.
I know.
It was
I
the
was
nice
thinking
guys.
of some that tried and tried and tried, and they just. The sad thing is, no matter what they did, they weren't going to get in.
Yeah, and there were probably some women like that too that didn't fit the profile of the club. Again, 28 women. Because there are only 28 women, maybe there are a few more now if the Master Sommelier organizational thing is not updated, but it is
They could have quintupled since then. You never know.
Right, yeah. Look, the fact is that because it is such a small number, I feel very strongly that the women who are part of that organization should just resign. I think the entire organization needs to go away. I think all the women, because there was actual rape and harassment and sexual favors promised for advancement. At this point, I can't understand how women could maintain their membership in an organization like that. I understand that you work for a very long time. I understand
you know how
that.
much work that takes.
I know, but you know what? In a heartbeat, I would give up my MBA if it turned out that was what was going on at Keenan Flagler. You can't really renounce your educational degree, but I don't say I'm a certified sommelier anymore because that's through the Court of Master Sommeliers, and I don't want to have any affiliation with them. I understand that some people have worked very hard for that, but it does not define you as a professional. I feel very, very strongly that when organizations fail this badly, and is this even in question that how disgusting this is?
No, it's not. But I was going to say, I mean, you're asking these women that make it to that level to make these tremendous sacrifices. What about prominent women that have been established in the industry for years who are afraid to speak out on it? I mean, don't you think that they're in a better position to help bring about change?
But this is exactly what I'm saying, is that these women who have been in for years, I said it, and you know who I'm talking about, these people are just as sexist. They are just ingrained. And because they also have been deified and put up on a pedestal, they're completely removed from the rest of what goes on in the world, because they may get occasionally at the beginning of their career a slight, but nobody bothers them anymore. They are well known. What about the rest of everybody?
Then they go on to defend these people.
Well, it's not even defending it. They ignore it.
Egregious way. Right. That same thing, really.
Yeah. Or they say they're going to try to fix it, which again, that really brings me to my... Well, I mean, it is absolute lip service. They're not going to do anything. They already have not led by example. Although you can be introspective. And there is one female master sommelier who I really have a whole new respect for. Her name is Alpina Singh in Chicago. She quit the Court of Master Sommeliers, and her piece about why she quit was amazing. I mean, she said, look, I said to my therapist, and of course that totally tracks that she would be introspective enough to look to someone else for help.
Yep.
I don't know what it's like not to be a master sommelier. I don't know what my career would be like. And the therapist basically said, well, go find out
Right.
because this is an embarrassment. I look at her as a really great role model for others who understand that, look, she's already made it. So by her making this statement and by her effecting change, it matters. It really does matter. Those statements matter. If every single woman who was a master sommelier quit the organization,
Right.
that would be a statement. They could not exist anymore. No women would join that organization. So this idea about self-preservation, and this is what worries me about going forward and about the scandals in general, is that we have two situations more recently. We have others that go back much further in this industry, which works on antiquated principles and says it's okay to act like this because we're in alcohol and this is what we do. Well, you know what? It's not okay. And maybe some of these solutions do work in other industries. Maybe it does help. But, scholarships only benefit very few people, as I said. Doing women wine groups without including the people who potentially could help you solve the problem. If you are a minority in wine, if you're a woman or a person of color or whatever, but I don't want to get into that because I am not in that group, right?
Right.
I'm not in that group. I can only speak for being a woman in wine. If you are in this group and you sit around with other women and talk about how to forward women and you don't include men who are the majority in the industry, and many of whom, by the way, are great human beings who respect and want to help women. This is not,
That's a great point.
it's not all men that are piggy. Those nice guys also fight against this, right? They fight against having to sit in a room and hear people say these terrible things. They don't
That's
want to
right.
be there.
That's
I'm
right.
sure you've been in those
I
situations.
have been. Absolutely.
You've been in some terrible
Where
situations where
people said some terrible things. Absolutely.
so, like, how do you feel if somebody says something horrible about women to you and then gives you the jab, like, oh, you know what it's like?
Well, I'm always so incredulous when that happens that I'd like to say like, oh, I speak up right away and say, "You're a pig, sir." No, it's usually like I say, you said that out loud, right, man? And
Have
they're
you
like,
said that before?
Yeah, yeah. Usually I say, well, I've got a whole house full of girls, including the dog. Women are way better than men, so
Yeah,
I
you put you plant
do.
the flag, so you make them shut up.
I don't chastise them the way I should. I just sort of let them know where my allegiance is. We'll put it that way.
Moving into the wine industry was like taking a step back in time. And I think I described it to you like that a lot of times, where it is so backward and the solutions are constantly the same. They're always the same. Let's just go reach right back into our bag of tricks and try to figure it out. Again, I don't know. And you all who are listening are normal wine people. Some of you are in the industry, but mostly you have other jobs. And you know that perhaps in some industries, it does help to just have women groups. But that's not going to work in wine. And it's not going to work really in most industries that are male dominated. And to alienate the men that are willing to help, you've got to pull them in because everyone needs retraining.
And so setting up women's groups and essentially self-isolating doesn't do much to spread the word or spread the message
Well,
to others that can help.
I talk about the seedy underbelly of wine frequently, and I just want people to know that this is mainly what I'm talking about. This kind of keeping people down, the caste system. I'm here, you're there. There's not enough of the pie to go around. You're dumb, I'm smart. Your approach is stupid, and I only do the things this way, and I'm a god in wine and you're a piece of crap. This whole power dynamic leads and perpetuates a cycle of sexism in this industry that has now finally been exposed. And certainly kudos to everybody who has done the reporting on this. But I think that there is a secondary problem in that the way that the industry approaches things in general is that it is so resistant to change. Look at how many of you in the United States, I can't speak to other places, can't get wine. You can't order wine. It's legal. The Supreme Court has made it legal for you to order wine from New York or California or Texas or wherever. And
There are places where it's easier to get marijuana
yeah,
than
but the wine
import
industry,
wine.
right? The wine industry treats people like children, right? They hold the power,
That's right.
and you have none.
Yep.
And so if you extrapolate that out to any of the verticals we talk about, and in this particular case, I'm going to again stick with the gender issue, you're going to have these problems, and they're not going away because the very structure of the industry is set up in a power dynamic that is not going to help. There's not a lot of money in wine. So the people at the very, very top are the ones who are constantly sponsoring everything. So the Gallows and the Constellations and Kendall Jacksons, they sponsor everything. They have say over what goes on. And yet they
Follow
are the
money.
ones, right? They are the ones that train a lot of people within the wine industry to become these kind of
Now that is
monster
that
figures.
is a scary thought right there.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
When you have a women's group and it's funded by Gallo, by Constellation, by Bronco, by any of these companies, understand that the conversation immediately is limited, which is why, again, I advocate a volunteer sort of structure, an organization where men and women can come together on a local basis, because all of these organizations are based in New York or they're based in some coastal city. And there are plenty of people who could use the help and training and camaraderie that is missing. These are the issues of wine. The power dynamics start to shift when you empower local people to be able to solve their own problems. And again, I don't mean to make this a political issue. I'm not trying to take I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat or I'm a this. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the issue of women in a male-dominated industry such as wine cannot be solved in California or New York or in Chicago, or it can't be solved in Omaha. It has to be solved on a local level, and it has to be solved with the help of men and women. I think we can wrap this up.
This is deep. You covered a lot here.
I
think we need a summary.
I felt like it was important to give my take on this because it is ongoing, and I want to.
And you've experienced it for years. This is not just something that happened in some one-off situation. This is repeated over and over by people in different companies, at different organizations, at different levels, at different points throughout your career.
And you are never not surprised by this.
No, and it makes you mad. You tell me one of these ridiculous stories, and you say, "Why aren't you more mad?" I'm like, "Why are you still surprised that this happens?"
I mean, I
can't
guess
believe
that's
that I'm saying that, but it's sad. I mean, whatever people are doing to try to rectify it is not working.
It just seems to be more layers of the onion are being pulled back. And I think that is why I wanted to talk about it now. And I know I've been critical of the Court of Master Sommeliers before for other purposes, but this, I think, speaks to the whole dynamic of the wine industry and why things are so messed up in so many different areas. That power dynamic is off.
That's right. And there's nothing that you can do to combat it, really. I mean, because if you you try to act more masculine, you're going to get portrayed as some female dogs. And if you don't fight it, then they're going to keep doing it.
I think the other thing is that it's great that there are women's initiatives, but we are also seeing, what does that do? I think this is the problem with the wine industry, is this magical thinking that you're going to put a Band-Aid on it and it's going to heal up underneath the Band-Aid and go away. Unfortunately, you can't break your leg and put a Band-Aid over it. It's not going to heal it up.
No.
The point is, you want to know why I always say stuff about the wine industry. This is why. I don't know what the solutions are. I know that the current solutions don't work. And I know that the people who are in place who want to do this can do it. I just don't know that they're working in the right directions. Now, does that mean that I am going to do this? I don't experience this anymore because I removed myself from what I felt was poisonous in the wine industry, honestly. And like I said in the piece, I removed myself purposefully because I saw this happening and I found it vile. It was not something I felt from a personality perspective that I wanted any part of. I saw my role in wine as being something that's very different, and I hope you all see that as well. But I do have one foot in that industry. I do look at it. And so as somebody who is an
It's
observer,
hard for you.
it is. As somebody who is an observer of the industry and somebody who is not really part of that in crowd or wants to be, I do think it's important for all of us on the outside to look at it, to know it's happening, and to understand that people are struggling, that the problems are rooted so deeply and so intrinsically in this industry that I'm not sure what the solutions are, but that currently the stuff that is being tried is not going to do the job. I felt like it was important for us to discuss this. Now, I know this is heavier than our usual show, but I do think occasionally it is really important for us to dig into what these people are going through, because it happens at the winemaker level and the assistant winemaker level, and it happens in marketing, and it happens in sales, and it happens in retail stores, and it happens in restaurants. This is happening everywhere that you go. So it is important for us as wine drinkers, wine lovers, to understand that it comes at some price because of the industry structure and the people that are in it. More than anything else, I think this show is about making people aware of what has happened, what does happen, and the fact that unless there is some sort of more creative solution, it's going to continue to happen. So at minimum, we all have to stay vigilant.
Completely forgot that I was talking to a new woman in the office the other day. And when I mentioned what you did, she had said that she started out her career on the restaurant side and was really interested in wine, but she found the whole environment so piggy, and that she felt like it
You mean
she
chauvinistic? Yeah.
chauvinistic, absolutely, that she was going to have no chance in working her way up the ladder, and so she abandoned it completely. Stuff that happens way more often than you think.
The number of great people lost because they didn't pass an exam, or they didn't play the game, or they didn't get promoted because of their gender or because of how they looked or whatever. It's staggering. None of it is okay. That's kind of the wrap.
Can I make jokes again next week?
You can absolutely make jokes again next week. I felt like the statement had to be made.
That's right.
And now we can move on to happier things. I guess the main question I have is, will we, because it's been a few years, go back on Amazon and look for the gifts like we did that one year where we found the wine bra?
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, could we ever top that is the real question. That was one, by the way, if you're listening to this and you skipped it, you need to go back and listen to that. That is one of our most memorable and
totally
hilarious.
forgot about that.
Maybe we just need to relaunch that.
I think I need to
Maybe
revise.
we-
No, I need to revise my Christmas gift list.
All right, moving on to our triteness next week. With that, this has been another episode of Wine for Normal People. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.